Welcome back on the Leaders Who Care. Today I have real privilege to welcome David Homan, who is a master connector and the mind behind Orchestrated Connecting, an approach that's helped thousands clarify purpose, fetch with impact, and build authentic, values-driven relationships. With a network of more than 2,000 global super connectors and experience advising across 25 vertical markets, he is launching SOA Connect, a CRM reimagining a meaningful connection. He's also co-authoring Orchestrating Connection, a bold take on building real communities in a tribal world. David, really honored to have you today and would love to dive into Orchestrated Connecting and how do you do all of this? More than 2,000 super connectors. So you're connecting super connectors. As you may know, we have this special format. I I reverse my role where I'll be playing a very skeptical and uncomfortable role, and we will put Dave on the hot seat. So David will be challenged with some uncomfortable questions, so the audience bear that in mind. It's not my intention to be uncomfortable and difficult, but I think there's a lot of insights that will come out of it. So I deeply care about the audience, deeply care about David and the guest. I'll be challenging today whether this is not just another transactional networking play dressed up in a purpose, especially at a time when loneliness is really quietly crippling leaders at the top. So we have a lot of questions to ask today.
Thank you, Marian. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I really appreciate the intro. I'll just clarify that because in my personal life, I'm a classical composer. Years ago, I needed to figure out a way to blend the two together, my artistic world and my executive world. So I came up with the term orchestrated connecting. And my entire world has been around orchestrating connections, relationships, now a technology, now a book, all with the idea of finding the right resonance between people and helping that resonance allow them to come together in order, as you put it, to care and to lead together.
Wonderful. Well, orchestrated also means strategic, right?
So very much. When you look at this as a composer, right? You have a melody, you have a chord structure, and what can be seemingly innocuous decisions. Do you put this in the strings? When do you add in the horns? Is there percussion? It changes the whole way that people hear it. And people only hear that final result of the way any composer chooses to make something simple into something huge and big, a community, such as an orchestra. But each of those decisions is actually incredibly strategic because when you have it right, people know in Star Wars, to give one of those relevant examples, they know when the horns come in, when Darth Vader walks in the room. They know when Luke Skywalker comes with a whole different sonority of instruments. But to choose it right is to choose carefully, then live by that. And that's the type of decision that everyone has to make, especially when you put people together, to live by how you put them together and whether you do in the first place or not.
Well, the first question that I'm really interested to understand, is loneliness just the price to pay of leadership?
I disagree. I think that it is very hard to be at the top in a leadership position and feel like you have to be at the top in order to be human. And I think that the most important thing for when I was leading a global philanthropy in particular was simply to figure out where I could separate and draw the lines, not necessarily with my employees or my board, not only with other peers, but how I could just be the normal person, the little kid I grew up as. And then when I step into that role, maintain that sense of humility. And when you maintain that sense of humility, you don't think that every challenge that comes to you is directed at you. You don't take that victim or martyr role. You take the role of what really leadership should be, which is a servant leader, bringing everyone up together with you. And if you do it that way, it's never lonely, even if you're at the top.
Well, that is an interesting because, yeah, some argue that isolation is inevitable the higher you climb. Orchestrating connection trying to fix really is just come, with power and responsibility.
So let me give you a little context, Marian, for the origin of why I build Orchestrated Connecting, because that'll give the right context.
Yeah.
So as I was running this nonprofit, I was meeting some of the richest, most powerful, influential people on the planet, often on a global scale. And when you run a philanthropy, what you hear 9 times out of 10, sometimes 99 out of 100, is no. Most people take a no when you ask for a check, you say thank you, and you walk out the door. For me, I would say, I really appreciate you telling me where you stand. What do you care about? And the fact I exhibited any curiosity back to somebody of prominence, a leader in every case, they were mostly shocked. I got to know them. Then, because my world is about authentic connection, I'd call them up a month, sometimes a year later, and be like, hey, I know you care about children's mental health. I got an intro for you. Do you want to meet this person? And then I would connect those two people, pillars of society. They would have the deepest 1 to 6 hour conversation and come back and thank me, then ask me what I needed. And instead of asking for a donation in that case, I would say, you know your friend Thomas? Everyone's told me he cares about the arts. Would you set up a lunch with him? And then those people who would now have become friends would say, actually, we'll do one better. We'll have you over for dinner. We'll invite Thomas and his wife. You bring your family, and let's just get to know each other. And so every one of those deep-seated relationships that I built amongst leaders, amongst those you could say could, by nature of their prominence, become lonely, was actually about figuring out whom they could trust. And so that was my origin, because I didn't just study how to get to the top. I really began a study of what got me there. And that was the trusted access point, the connector or connectors in anyone's life who can say, please take the time, and you take the time. And so, yes, there might be loneliness at the top. I don't want to discount that in my previous answer and say it doesn't exist. I've experienced it myself. But the people that you trust around you, who know that the intentions are for you, not through you, when I orchestrate connections, my entire community, the basis was, what if you put together those trust makers? In some cases, they run a company. In some cases, they built and sold Investopedia or whatever it might be. But in every case, that trust and that relationship value means by having that, you're inherently not lonely, because you're in a constant virtual cycle of respect, reciprocity, and hearing the other person.
Well, that sounds too good to be true sometimes, with the way you're describing it. Because a lot of senior leaders today are surrounded by people, yet still feel deeply disconnected. So you talk about orchestrating connection, but what makes it different from performative networking or relationship building for the sake of the business gain in this case?
So one thing I love about your podcast is, you take on this more skeptical role to put people in the hot seat, just to show their true character. I have no concerns for whatever questions you can ask me, because I'm comfortable in the way I live my life and my purpose. And when you're comfortable in how you live your life and your purpose, and that doesn't have to be a Taoist life, a monastic life, a fully meditative life, it just has to be with intention and purpose. There's a different way to act around people, and they act differently around you when you've done that self-work, that self-discovery to say, this is my value, this is what I bring. How can I help you? And would you like to join me in what I care about? In all leadership that I've seen, every movement that I've studied, the thousands of individuals I've interacted with, both the positive ones I asked to join my network and the negative ones that don't get it, if you are after something transactional, you can't build a relationship. If you're after something relational, you can build all of the body of work, transactions, and outcomes from it, as long as you can keep the relationship first. And that's approach, more than anything, that's understanding your self-worth. It's having humility despite whatever you've been able to do, but it's not sitting on what you wish could have happened to you, raging against the dying of the light. It's looking internally and knowing that if you're going to bring value to the world, the best value you can bring is to do it with other people. I'd be hard pressed to find somebody skeptical talking to somebody who's intentional and purposeful, as I know that you are with everything you do in the academy that you run. So when you find that, you find a different way to look at tribalism. Because then it isn't how you look, your age, your gender, your geography, your net worth. It's values driven based on action. I don't think anyone could be skeptical of that.
No, I really appreciate that. And you describe your book as a roadmap, which really interested about what you've done, and it's great that you've described it. But if I'm a leader who is building my career on performance and achievements, where do I even begin on the roadmap towards building intentional and empathic community?
So let's first understand what that community is. Because everyone will say, well, I belong to a membership club, a network, a community, whatever it might be. There's a difference of a community and a purposeful community. So to start on that roadmap, you have to do the self-work. You have to be able to walk into a room and look at that culture of the room. You have to see whether there's diversity or not in the nature of the people. You have to know, if you don't know what you're fully after, you have to know what you're aspiring to be after. You have to want something that's not just material success, because no one I know who's ever made money says that was what it was worth. They found their joy and the purpose either in it or after it. And the ones that are the loneliest have the biggest regrets because they gave up the things that actually fulfill our life's purpose. Family, love, friends, children, giving back. So if you take that more, shall we say, soulless approach, and you are after the gain, then by virtue of it being an aggregate of the math of how well did you do, how well did you perform, how much did you make, how much did people respect you because of what you made, that's not the right starting point. And I'm not saying that capitalism or this isn't the right goal. If you're going to achieve success and build something and make billions from it, then fantastic. But then what? If you look at some of the most significant leaders on the planet, take Hamdi, the founder of Chobani, who's a refugee. He has given out more of his annual income than any other philanthropist on this planet as he made it, the majority of it, every year. Partly the reason, besides liking his yogurt, that I buy the yogurt, because he is purpose and mission driven in the way he leads his company and the values from it as he built the wealth, not because he had the wealth. So when you set that as your goal from the beginning, the most important thing is to understand that everyone around you needs to champion you and be your ally. And if you're trying to work through everyone to be ahead of them, you might succeed, but you fail in that game of life, and having the people around you end up being the most valuable part of what you've done.
Hey, how do you find, because that's great, and thank you for sharing, but what about with a lot of people who really want to take advantage of you? I mean, they will pretend that they are really care, but in that community, and they just want to, how do you spot those? Because there will always be some bad sheep in any community that
always. I could tell you all those stories, but there might be this thing called libel that comes up from this podcast, and I'd rather avoid that. Here's what I'd say, right? Most communities want everyone to belong, either to pay a membership or to feel that everyone belongs. In my opinion, not everyone belongs. In my network since day one, which is a decade ago, I made a very, very clear rule for me to embody and everyone in my network to embody, which is to be in that community, you had to be an action-oriented, natural giver. And this was the thing that has made my network famous amongst the small circle I'm in. Would I leave my kids with you? I'll have people who go to Davos together.
Okay.
And they go, hey, you're a connector. Do you know David Homan? And they go, yeah. And then they pause and they go, oh, well, he'd leave his kids with us. And they go from strangers to trusted allies in a second because of that sacred trust I bestow upon them. So there's an element of this that is, you have to have your code. I call it my mantra. And if you want to filter that out, make everyone rise to that standard. And if they don't, they'll either self-filter out, or two parts of how I run my community. We were introduced through a trusted friend. If you were not that type of high integrity, extraordinarily busy giver, I would have judged them for the intro. And if this turned out to have been a really negative intro, I would remove them from my community as well. Because if I couldn't trust who they put me in front of, then how could I trust that if I put them in front of somebody else, they wouldn't do the same? So it doesn't mean everyone is an angel in life or everyone is perfect, but in the world and the game of relationships, in my network, do what you say you're going to do, be an extremely good judge of character, and build a relationship, not seek a transaction or work through somebody. It's a connector network. It's very, very specific, but every community, without exception, should have a rule system that lets people elevate themselves into it, self-select out, or be able to be removed because they didn't adhere to what they agreed to.
But come on, Dave. In a world where time is limited and agendas are full, is it really possible to create meaningful connections at scale?
You know, I know you know that, but here's what I'd say, right? I grew up in a small town in Florida. My father was a college professor. Yes, I had an advantage of being a white man in this world and being middle class, but I stepped into this cutthroat city of New York I've now been for 25 years and now have traveled many places around the world. And everywhere I go, I meet the most incredible, authentic people because of the code, because I am unapologetic for whom I want to be around. And that standard is so pervasive that people who know that I am not the type of person to connect with don't bother. And yes, I smell it out now, Marian. I get asked all the time if I can get people to celebrities or billionaires, the people I've met. The people I stick to don't care about that. What they care about is how I built such trust. And then we have a real conversation about how they've built trust. And then I know I found another person. And you can only make one intro at a time. You can't build depth in a group conversation. Every authentic connection comes with that vulnerability and that curiosity. But think about it, right? How many times do you meet somebody who's really excited to tell you about themselves and asks nothing about you? That's the first filter. Are they not curious?
Hey, wow, that's an interesting one. You're now sharing some secrets.
Well, I mean, it's all in the book, right? The other side of that, the pair of it is, who cares if you're vulnerable, if you're comfortable in yourself? So I will share things, not that verbal diarrhea that some people try to do in this world, but I will share things that are vulnerable, and I will see if people respond. I now have an 86-year-old, soon to be 87-year-old father who's in great health for his age, but every couple months, it's, oh, he's back on a catheter. His quality of life is diminishing. It might at some point become permanent, and I am powerless to do anything to help him with that. And I've had many friends who have lost their fathers recently. I live in fear of that every single day, being somebody whose dad had me when he was 40. But more than that, I am living in the reality that all of my success might be overshadowed by losing him in the next several years as I achieve it. You share something like that, and that is personal and true to you and for anyone listening, a schmuck's not going to respond to that. They're going to go, so you worked with Ray Dalio. What was it like? A heartfelt person's going to go, I've been dealing with my grandfather for a while now. It's really hard because he raised my parents on his own, and I don't know what to do because he's their anchor and I'm not old enough to be their anchor yet. And you want to talk about authentic connection, right? Everyone in the world has that. The people who are afraid to share it are afraid to embrace the pain that comes to then create the opposite of what loneliness is, which is this gnawing feeling no one gets you and you're all alone. And the solution is share it selectively and then build depth and trust without an outcome except for to be in that moment. and then watch what happens when that person becomes a strategic ally to you because they see who you are, not just what you desire.
You've answered some of the objections that I already had, but you speak
I'm
about...
trying. You said hot seat, so I better answer some of your questions in advance.
That's interesting. You speak about vulnerability and curiosity as cornerstones, but for some who has risen through ranks by being decisive and focused, how do you start to practice that vulnerability without it feeling uncomfortable or forced?
So when you're decisive and focused, you are taking in the potential decisions in a room and you're making the decision. What would you rather do? Would you rather just make a unilateral decision where no one feels heard, or hear the people? And then what would you rather do? Would you rather make that decision not really knowing what those people are going through or what they come from? What happens when you make a decision that might be counter to other people and what they feel is right, but they feel that you respected where they're coming from and what they're doing, and you know that something happened to their kid the other day? There's no reason that it has to be one or the other. This idea of just the alpha male walking to a room and going, this is what I said, we're going to rename Disney to be Bubbles. And everyone's like, well, what a horrible idea. And then the head of Disney goes, well, that's too bad. We don't care about the legacy. We're changing it. Might be a horrible idea, but the only way people have enough trust to counter you as a leader, which is where the best decisions are made, is if you've actually spent the time to understand the fabric of why everyone else is driven, besides their salary or their ownership or their belonging in something, to actually build something towards a greater purpose than you making the decisions because you're the leader. And that's why I use that term, which is really amazingly pervasive, of servant leadership. If you as a leader, everyone feels you are serving them and serving the larger goal, you get to the better decisions, even if they're quick and split, because the core of who you are doesn't change from a decision you make, whether it's the right decision or not, but you will destroy the fabric of everything you do unless success erases all of that, unless you actually understand the people around you are your community. They might be subsidiary to you in rank, but it doesn't make them less of a person, each of them. And the minute you treat somebody as an other or a lesser, you lose the respect when you need it the most, which is in those challenging times where maybe you didn't make the right decision, or the decision you have to make is an incredibly hard one. In every book on leadership, everyone says, in the biggest decisions I was credited with making, I had to be humble, I had to listen to others, and I had to really weigh these. There's no such thing as a split second life-altering decision that didn't have a lot of legwork, discussion, and lost night's sleep leading up to it.
But relational trust is a powerful phrase. But what does it actually look like in action, especially among high-level leaders who are used to keeping their guard up?
I've been around a lot of those high-level leaders.
Yeah.
I've worked with two of the richest people on the planet. I've interacted with and done projects with amazing A-lister celebrities and artists. I've been around worlds where, I have a friend whose family makes most of the toys our kids have. Another one where you go on all of their cruise ships. Another one where during COVID, you need to keep your hands cleaned. You use their name-branded hand sanitizer. Like, in every case, these are friends of mine. These are people that I trust. In some cases, they invest in my startup. In other cases, they put me on their podcast. In other cases, they give me swag like sanitizer during COVID. There's a lot of different examples of it. But relationship trust means that things are going to stay relational no matter what happens between you, because you've built that trust. And when I have been in those circles of leaders, they all have their people. It's not a bunch of sharks in the water. That's what you see in Hollywood and other places. And trust me, those sharks do exist. Great whites on down. But there's no such thing as a pillar of society, a billionaire giving pledge leader, whatever it might be, where their only goal is to make themselves the absolute top with exceptions, because ego does play a big part in this. But the idea, Marian, that each of those individuals, by virtue of that, have isolated themselves, they've built the people around them. In many cases, they've built themselves up. There are so many cases of friends from childhood becoming famous together, building rival companies, and still maintaining a friendship, even when their football teams compete against each other.
How do you build a real trust without transactional agendas?
You can't just spend your time making tons of friends, building everyone out, managing 50, 100, 150, the Dunbar number or higher, right? You have to be selective. So in my world, if you want to build trust, that's why I use the term action-oriented in my network. Base your trust on action. Does somebody say they're going to do what they say they're going to do? Are you aligned now in helping them with your time, your money? Are they aligned in doing the same with you? And when you want to build it, it has to be strategic. But when it's relational, it's not manipulative. It's not like I'm talking to somebody in order to get to their father, in order to get an investment in my startup. I'm talking to them because I actually do care about them. And if they care about me, they're either going to draw the line and say, this is not something we'd invest in, or they say, we'd love to hear you out. And there's going to be respect in every part of that process. And that trust, that respect is earned through action. It's earned through intention, but it all goes back to why my co-author Noah Askin and I keep using the term purposeful community. If everyone around you is like that, that means you have a community built on this relationship trust.
You talk about only connecting with people who you leave your children with. I love that in many ways, because to trust somebody with my children is probably the highest level of trust. And that is a very different trust. It's one thing that you trust somebody for connecting, they do something for you, but to leave your children with, how do you test that? How do you kind of make the decision that they can actually be a good example of care for your children?
Anyone who has kids would understand a parent's instincts. As much as every parent would love a break from their kids and be like, hey, Marian, I'm in Manchester. Take them, please. I need a break. They can have more ice cream, right? The sacred bond of that is, how many people in your life would you really and truly trust to that extent? And many of my friends who are either not ready for children or choose to live a life without children, everyone gets it, because the psychology of this is your legacy. This is what you're putting all of your energy into. This is your family. How would I feel if I was watching your children and something happened to them? So when I built that code, right, I study a lot of behavioral psychology and human design and all these different dynamics to understand what makes people people. And everyone has had other codes. If we were stuck in an elevator for 4 hours, would we hate each other by the end of it? Would I have you over for dinner? Or if it was 2 a.m. and you were in New York and you said, I have to go, I need to drive, can I borrow your car? There's different distinguishing factors of what somebody might say makes somebody part of their world. I don't think I coined it, but I made it very prevalent. I've made that the code because it is an immediate self-filtering mechanism for how many people you truly trust in your life. I've only left my kids with a handful of my network, mostly parent friends, mostly because when you're really busy and you want to be an active parent, you don't want your network coming in and feeding your kids, but a lot of them have met them. Everyone in my community who's an active member, I would. Now that my kids are 8 and 11, they'd run all over them. My son would get you to buy him $100 worth of Pokemon cards. My daughter would have convinced you that instead of, making a cucumber salad, you should go out for gelato. And you'd be like, oh man, I've been had. Now I'm out, couple $100, but your children love me. But the idea, right, what I wanted to convey is, if we all have these circles of trust, then when we have them overlap with each other, the trust happens more quickly, which is why I use the term to build relationships at the speed of trust. Once you start with that, it is transferable without having to spend years making it.
Because of our community, a lot of leaders listening to the podcast, and for leaders who are feeling the pressure of isolation, or struggling to really from genuine connection at the top, really that they don't have that, and that could be quite a big thing actually. What are 3 practical steps they can take today to start building more meaningful relationship, more empathic relationship, both with their teams, but also with their outside really world, with people that are not connected to their work, to their family and friends?
First step is you have to understand what the shared pain you're feeling to be that way is, and find the words for it that will allow you to connect to others who feel the same. So I have hundreds and hundreds of people who run communities within my network. When I say to them, I'd love for you to be part of this, but to be part of this, you have to ask me for help. You have to take the step to do the opposite of what you do, which is constantly support your community and helping them. The only way to be around me, tell me what you need. That's the shared pain I had in the isolation before I built my network this way. It's the shared pain with the hundreds of people I talk to every quarter, the thousands in my network. Everyone goes, oh my God, I spent all of my time giving to others. No one's asked me what I need in how long I can't even remember. So if you want to take a first step, take what your shared pain is, that's a vulnerability, into a curiosity, yep, and turn that into something to find the way to reach out to the others, sometimes in your community, often in other communities who have that shared circumstance. Once you understand that shared pain, you know you can work through it. And once you find that you're not alone in that feeling, not only are you no longer alone, somebody else is another part of that solution, but just being heard in that, that's the first step. Because if that's what you're struggling with, and anyone who's listening to this is going, well, all right, I hear this guy talking about it, it sounds really great, but I can't confide in anyone about that. I have to be the leader. I have to be the boss. I have thousands of people. I have paid members. Like, there's all of the reasons for it. Then I go, okay, but you're listening to me. You're listening to Marian. We both run networks and communities, and we feel this way. And I'm on your podcast to talk about my insights in it, which you have profound insights back. Find us. Ask me who else is in my network. I found thousands. It wasn't that hard. I just asked for it. So that's number 1, right? Number 2 is, for me, I'm lucky, right? I mean, I'm a classical composer and no one listens to my music. I've gone around for the last decade going, orchestrated connecting, making your life a symphony. There are videos on my homepage of me playing piano in front of my network. If you go and schedule a Zoom call with me, I have this call waiting video where I'm playing piano in advance of Zoom letting you into my room. And still, every single day, somebody goes, I didn't know you were a composer. I didn't know you could play piano. Is that really you? And I go, yes, I'm a composer connector. I built something to combine the two. It's on my home. People don't pay attention, right? But I mention all that because you can't take that away from me. You might think, I'm not some guy, but just coming in saying, like, there's a way to do this. Be curious, be vulnerable. Like, life's going to be great if you're like that. No, for me, I'm a systems thinker who took the way I would look at an orchestra and look at my life, and I combine them. And the thing you can't take away is I still play piano. I write classical music. Some people listen. Some people love it. Other people don't care. But you can't take that away from me. And if you want to have purpose in your life, find that one thing that no matter what the criticism for what you're doing, there's no one that can criticize that. And I'm not just saying, right, that has to be about being a musician. It could be every Saturday you go out, you play American version soccer, rest of the world football, and you've just always been a really great sweeper, playing all the time, and you love playing defense, and once a month you take off your tired bones and you go out and you play, whether you win or not. That was your thing that no one can criticize because you did it as a kid and you've loved that sport your entire life. You could knit and make scarves for people. You could every month go to a homeless shelter and talk with people and help them. You have to have something that anybody criticizing it would differentiate them as being somebody that you want to have out of your life, and hold on to that no matter what else you do, because that's the humanizing part that makes us all profoundly connected.
So number one is basically ask for help, be vulnerable. That's what
I would just say, like, you have to figure out what your pain is and figure out a way to share it in a way that you both transcend from
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That second one is find your thing, right? Find your thing that is indefensible, couldn't take criticism from, you love it, and it gives value and humility.
Okay.
The third one is stop complaining about being in that situation, because by complaining about it, it means you've not solved your problem, and it's really not that hard to solve. There's this Simpsons episode where you look at the origin of Ned Flanders, who goes Italy, oodly, oodly, doodly, and his hippie parents take him to see this famous doctor. And Ned Flanders' dad walks up to this doctor and he goes, "Doctor, you've got to help us. We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas." And I think of this, Marian, every single time somebody feels powerless and stuck because they have this feeling, but they've tried nothing. But why hasn't anything changed? Like, it literally just stop feeling like somebody is out to get you and you are the victim and you're the martyr, because the most incredible leaders, the best givers I've met on this planet, if you start having that hard conversation, as my co-author Noah did with 50 of my network, we found with 50 out of 50 people, every single one who would be deemed a leader who cares experienced some sort of trauma in their life as a kid or in their young adult years, and they made the choice not to be a victim or a martyr. The people who make excuses for not having what they need are stuck in that really horribly lonely, sad cycle of blaming the world for what's happened to them. And the easiest solution is to get out of that, everything we're talking about. It's really not that hard to tell somebody, even if you work with them or they're your employee, you're having a hard day or something's happening with your family. It's really not that hard to say that you're worried about something. It doesn't take away from your leadership to be human. What takes away from your leadership is being indecisive and letting those demons get the best of you without building the relationships around you so that when you have to make those decisions, you're backed up by them.
David, this is really helpful, and we appreciate your feedback on a lot of those insights and tips. But just talking about you, why are you doing this? What's the, why is this drive, why is this motivation arising in you to help all these people around the world, right? That really, well, some of them obviously want to take advantage without giving anything back, which we talked about. But the ones who really are givers, but maybe maybe don't know how to get any benefit out of it. What's your motivation?
Well, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't start with step one of what we just went over. My shared pain, right? You want to know my triggers? I hate hypocrisy and injustice. From being a little kid on, my mom was just with me, with my dad last week visiting, where my mom just turned 80. And I'll give you one example, right? I was in sophomore year of high school. I've been nominated as a Hugh O'Brien Youth Leader. I went to Tallahassee, Florida, with 100 other young leaders. It's all these teenagers staying in hotels, learning about leadership with all these incredible mentors, and I became one of the finalists for it. I learned my lesson because I didn't win the larger prize, which is right before you're interviewed, don't run up 4 flights of stairs and then not stop to catch your breath before you walk into an interview. Because I came in breathless, I was off, I didn't get the award. But there was this beautiful pianist playing, this teenage girl. She was just playing at a party. There was a piano there. She started playing. And then this dude right? He was tall, in shape, basically insulted her, pushed her to the side, and showed off what he could play. He was a phenomenal player, but he had no soul. So I walked up and I was like, hey, you sound incredible. Keep in mind, I was a shy kid who didn't get in front of a camera, didn't do what my dad's done his whole life as a professor, an actor and director. But I couldn't stand that this beautiful pianist who was just playing her heart out had her heart broken because some douchey dude pushed her to the side because he should get the spotlight. So I compliment him greatly. I tell him I play a little bit. I ask if I can try. And he finally says yes after he finishes some other piece. And everyone's been around us, right? We're talking like 100 people are now watching this. And this girl's watching. Keep in mind, I've never had any game. I don't know how to flirt with people. She probably liked me or had a crush on me. After I'll tell you what happened, I just walked away because I've never understood how to flirt or engage with people that way and how to connect. But I'm dense the other ways. And I started to play simplest piece, Heart and Souls. Now it's a 2-person piano piece, 4 hands, but I started playing it by myself. And then I incorporated in Nirvana, the Chili Peppers, U2, Dave Matthews, the Rolling Stones, and all this guy could hear with like, here's this kid just playing this stupid little thing, and everyone else who wasn't so dense heard me making fun of him because I interwoven music that shouldn't have fit beautifully. And then I invited the girl to come play, and the guy sulked away because he wasn't as good as either of us. He just looked like he was. In every case where I have found that I had an advantage, there was somebody better than me, somebody who had spent more time, who had more skill, who had more charisma, and they weren't born into it. They weren't a man. They weren't white. They weren't wealthy, whatever it might be. And I've always tried to stand up for people who are made to feel other simply because they're not the conformity of what a room is. And when I realized, talking about this shared pain, that the world was not a better place because people who have the means to change it don't talk to each other, that was my wake-up call, being in New York around billionaires and going, I don't understand. We have unhoused people on the streets. Artists are struggling to make a living. We're taking advantage of each other because we believe our importance is our net worth. And I didn't have this idealism view set that everyone should just give out everything they had. No, like, I believe innovation and capitalism are essential for change. But I believe the people who have inherited that success or have that success, if they talk to each other and they can find a common purpose that is greater than what their own desires or wants are, then you can actually make change in this planet happen. And my solution, my efficiency model was to launch a global network running dozens of events every year, managing thousands more relationships than any sane person should ever do, to build a system where the people who build that trust become the most powerful. Because the most powerful people on the planet are the ones who can get to everyone else and say, you should really talk to Laura. You should talk to Tolu. There's something more in this. And I believe that when we do that right, with purposeful communities, layering with each other, overlapping circles, either people rise to it or finally, it's not just about relationship trust, it's about your reputational value. The only thing that you can never buy, you can only earn. And if I can be a humble part of being an advocate for that to happen, so it didn't have to be me stepping up to defend that young teenage girl, it was everyone else who got upset that that guy pushed her off the piano, basically scooted her out while she was playing because he thought he was more important and he thought he deserved to be heard. Then, like, shame on everyone else who didn't have the courage, right? And again, we were all teenagers. None of us knew the heck we were doing. But why should we live in a society where we let that happen? Why should we live in a society where we champion people who bully other people? Why should we live in a world where people are making billions of dollars, where every parent lives in fear that their kid might commit suicide because on Instagram they didn't get enough likes or didn't, value enough of TikTok views? And yet we haven't changed it because the people profiting from it, their reputation hasn't been diminished by the pain, suffering, and deaths that they are causing. There's a different way to do it. And it's not to eradicate what's there. It's not to stop what's happening. It's to be more conscionable about it and to hold people accountable. So you want to know my why? Obviously, I'm pretty riled up with saying this, right? I want to be in a world where I don't have to be a part of that. I don't have to find a solution. I don't have to rally against this world where people will take advantage of each other and you have to have me on a podcast on a hot seat to talk about leaders being lonely. Yes, all leaders are lonely. How about the people who are also leaders? Ask them how they're doing.
David, let me just put it the other way around. What if you had no limit and all the resources in the world? What world would you want to live in? What would you want to change? One thing that will make profound difference to the world.
We're in such a troubled world. That's such a challenging question. Honestly, I would love for people to be accountable for their actions. And if their actions are such that they diminish other people, have to work their entire rest of their lives to earn back the trust they lost by taking advantage of others. I don't believe in this 24-hour news cycle of somebody says something, then they don't mean it a year later. You said it, you meant it, or you didn't mean it, but you said it strategically, and that hurt other people. I do believe that people can change to some degree. I think that their views can evolve, but I don't believe that their actions can in many cases. So if I could change something, right, let's say, I'll just try to think of a non-controversial example, but there's very, very few of them. Let's take a boss who took sexual advantage of his employees. I don't want to buy his product anymore. I want him to be out of his company. Period. If it wasn't consensual and it was a repeated pattern of using the fact somebody needed to feed themselves or in some cases their family, and you took out your needs on somebody who couldn't defend themselves, then F you. You made that choice repeatedly. I'd love for you to have to be accountable for that for the rest of your life. So that, for me, right, I base my trust on action. I believe that we make decisions, and no one is perfect. I am far from it. I have made many mistakes in my life. I continue to make them. But how I've tried to make up for the mistakes that I have made shows my true character. And if we were all trying to do that, we would not live in a world where people feel powerless because those who can take advantage, either because we buy their products or we put them into office, that lack of accountability is what's creating the insanity of our current world.
Thank you for sharing how you feel about this. I resonate a lot with a lot of those. It's we do live in such a world that is full of injustice, and I think what you really want to see is more accountability, more justice for the action. I know one thing. We are not accountable for the consequences. That comes automatically. We're accountable for our choices. So to summarize this, it's you'd love to see more people making better choices because automatically they will have better consequences. For the audience, where do they buy your book? If anyone wants to get in touch, what is the kind of thing you need, you'll support? Because obviously you have a lot of connections, people very interested in your connections, etc. But just describe a little bit more of if anyone wants to do better or be part of the community, where should they find you?
Sure. So easiest for the book, if you take my name or you take the title, Orchestrating Connection, it's available Barnes & Noble, Amazon, soon to be other local bookstores. The book comes out August 5th. So it's everything in pre-sales now.
Pre-sales, great. That builds up.
And then my website for my primary community, Orchestrated Connecting, there are videos, there are articles, there are ways to contact me there. I take very seriously who I let into my network. It's invite only, it's private, because I want to stand by that rule of would I leave my kids with everyone. And I wish I could be in a position now where I could connect with everyone who just wants insight. But if somebody actually takes the time to say to me, I read your article, The Impact Ask. I took the time. Here's mine. I'll read it. If I can help, I'll help, because a natural giver wants to give no matter what sacrifice to their time there is. But to be honest, I'm after something bigger than myself. It's why I've been doing this in this way for so long. And when you do something bigger than yourself, you just can't have your friends come along for the ride. So for the leaders in your community, for those listening, for people that are listening and haven't taken the step to ask what you need, Marian, I'd first say back to anyone, forget what I need. If they're listening because of you and you're incredible following what you've built, what do you need more? And could they first ask you? And then from that, could they come to me and say, hey, I just looked at what Marian's doing and I'm going to build another leaders academy in Hungary now, and then Romania. And suddenly all of Eastern Europe has what the youth there need, which is a path to a future that isn't one that feels like where you were born is where you will stay and what you do is the only thing you can do, because their potential is much greater. And if the outcome of people listening to this was people going, wait, I didn't know he had a larger vision, like I'd say first, like, let me be the one to say to them, what about your incredible vision? And if I can be the catalyst for this, then what do I get credit for? Orchestrating the connection, which is where I get my brand identity, which maybe makes what I'm doing, substantial on this planet. Like the joke to all my friends when they ask how it's going is, I was like, it's going great. I might at some point be able to put on my LinkedIn founder and author and then go back to what I'm doing. Or maybe the startup I'm launching, the book that I have coming out, the global community, all this is part of something that is much greater than me. And I'm simply a voice in it, but a voice that's heard because something that I said made you think about an action you could take. And what I'd love to really hear is the actions that you took, the gratitude you've expressed, and how you brought others up with you to do it. Not just about our choices and the consequences, but the celebration of when those outcomes are positive for more than the sum of one.
David, thank you so much. For the audience, the reason I was so excited about David is because he really wants to help many other people, to lift them out of their situations, to help them out through the meaningful connections. And as you all know, my vision and purpose is being focused on not just to be successful. What success is relative, but whatever we decide or end up doing successfully, we always ask the question, how did we do it? Did we do it in a way that we lifted others? Did we really do it in a caring way? Or did we do it without any consideration and a lot of negative impact? And that's why I was so excited about David, because he just wants to encourage more people to be accountable for their actions. The how is equally, if not more important than your end results and whatever billions. Because as you may know, even billionaires committed suicide. So the money is not single equalized, even though it's the easiest probably to measure. There's so many other aspects of life and relationships. In my principles, goes before money. Whatever money can buy, relationships can pay for it. That's why I was so excited. And David, thank you so much for sharing all those insights. Really wish you a lot of orchestrated connections that really make a difference to the world. And thank you for being a truly leader who cares and a contributor to humanity.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate all that you do.
Thank you, David. All the best.